My 6 legs were shaking before I even reached the chamber doors. I had run faster than I ever ran in my long life. Faster than my old body was built to move, and the scrolls under my arms kept slipping out of my grip. My name is Velari Mun. I am the keeper of records for the Galactic conquered, and I have been the quiet historian in the back of the room for over 200 years. Nobody ever calls for me in a panic. Nobody ever waits for me to speak until that morning, until the alarm sounded across every wall of the Hall of Stars, and a voice told me to come to the council chamber. At once, the Krellian hegemony, the cruelest empire in the known galaxy, had just declared a new target for invasion. A small blue planet in a quiet system on the outer edge of the map, a world we had sealed away, a world we had pretended did not exist, the humans of Earth. I had been the junior worker who filed that report. I had been the one who stamped the seal myself, and I knew with a cold weight in my chest that the Krellians had no idea what they had just done. The chamber door slid open, and the cold light of the hollow display hit my face. The Krellian envoy was already in the center of the floor, standing tall on his armored legs, speaking with that smug tone his people always used when they wanted everyone to feel small. I saw the faces of the other ambassadors around the wide ring of seats, the tall Vorn ambassador with his silver fur, the floating ethel speaker with his soft glowing light, the reptile envoys from the southern arm, the water beings from the Trail Sea. All of them were quiet. All of them were waiting. The Krellian was announcing his fleet, 400 ships of the strongest class, already in motion, already in flight, already crossing the dark gap between stars on their way to Earth. I dropped my scrolls. I did not mean to. They just fell from my arms. Because my arms had stopped working, the sound of them hitting the smooth floor echoed across the whole chamber, and every head turned toward me. Krellian envoy looked at me the way a hunter looks at a small creature in the grass. He gave a slow, low laugh, the kind that rattled in his throat plates. The historian has arrived, he said. Perhaps he wishes to record our victory before it even happens. I did not laugh back. I did not bow. I did not greet the chamber the way I had been trained to greet it for 2 centuries. I walked to the open floor, my legs still shaking, my breath still short, and I said the words I had been holding inside me from the moment the alarm rang. Pull your fleet back. Pull it back now before it is too late for every one of your soldiers. The chamber went still. Even the ethel speaker's glow dimmed for a moment. The Krellian envoy tilted his head and clicked the plates of his jaw together in what I knew was amusement. You wish to save us, historian, he said, from a planet of soft creatures who still burn fuel to fly, from a world that does not even have proper engines for the deep dark, from children, from yourselves, I said. I felt every eye in the chamber on me. I could hear the soft hum of the recording crystals as they captured every word. I had spent my whole life in the shadows of these meetings, taking notes, writing footnotes, keeping the long memory of our people safe. I had never stood in the center of the floor. I had never asked the chamber to listen to me, and now I was about to say the thing that had been written in a sealed file for 200 years, the thing the survey team had begged us to never speak of, the thing I had stamped with my own seal when I was young and proud and certain that we had made the right choice. The world you call a backwater, I said, is under Quarantine seal, a Class 9 seal. The highest seal we have ever placed on any planet in the known galaxy. Do you know what that seal means? The Krellian envoy waved a clawed hand. It means they are small. It means they are weak. It means no one bothered with them because they had nothing worth taking. No, I said, it means the opposite of all those things. The Speaker of the Council, an old being of soft folded skin and 3 calm eyes, leaned forward. In his seat, he had always been kind to me. He had read my reports when no one else did. He spoke now in a slow, careful voice. Velari, he said, what is in the file? I closed my eyes. I felt the room waiting. The Krellian envoy made a soft hissing sound as if he was bored, but I could tell he was listening too. They were all listening. And so I told them what the survey team had found when they first went to that little blue world. I told them about a species that did not grow the way other species grow. Species that did not learn through gentle steps, a species that learned through hardship, through struggle, through the long, brutal climb out of caves and forests, and never, not once, did they stop climbing. Other races, I said, had small wars at the dawn of their history, and then they grew out of them. They became wise. They became calm. They built peace into the bones of their cultures, and they moved forward. Together, humans were different. Humans had been climbing for thousands of years, and every step they climbed, they made better tools. Every tool they made, they used to climb higher, and the tools they made best, the tools they were most proud of, the tools they spent the most time and money and care on, were the tools that helped them win against each other. They have a special word for the worst parts of their own history. I told the chamber, they call them their finest hours. They build statues to people who fell in the great struggles of their past. They write songs. They make moving pictures that last for hours. They teach their young the names of leaders who came before, leaders who held the line, leaders who refused to bend. They do not see their hard past as a stain. They see it as a story. And every human child grows up hearing that story and learning the lesson at the heart of it. I opened my eyes. Chamber was silent. The lesson, I said, is that you do not bow. The lesson is that when someone comes for your home, you stand and you fight, and if you fall, the next one stands, and the next one after that, and the next one after that, until the thing that came for your home is gone or you are gone. There is no third path in the human mind. There has never been one. 200 years ago, the survey team came back to this very chamber, and they begged us to seal that world away. Not because the humans were too weak to know we existed, because they were too dangerous to invite. Vaughn ambassador let out a soft hum of disbelief. Surely, he said, you are exaggerating, historian. They have no deep space engines. They have no plasma. They have no shield arrays. They have weapons made of metal and chemical fire. What can such a people do against 400 Krellian ships? I turned to him slowly. I do not know, I said, and that is what makes me afraid. The Krellian envoy laughed again, but this time the laugh sounded a little less certain than before. He looked at the hollow display at the center of the chamber, where a slow, soft map showed the path of his fleet through the dark. The little blue marker that meant Earth was still very far away, but it was getting closer with every passing minute. He puffed out the plates of his chest and turned back to the council. Honored speakers, he said, I came here as a courtesy. The hegemony does not need your permission to expand. We have chosen this world and we will take it in 6 of your hours. My fleet will arrive in their sky in 7 hours. The work will be done in 8 hours. The new slaves will be on their way too. Our markets, I tell you all this so that when you hear of our victory tomorrow, you will not be surprised. He turned to leave. He took 2 steps, and the Speaker of the Council raised a soft folded hand. Stay, the Speaker said. Stay and watch with us, envoy. If your victory is so certain, you will lose nothing by watching it together with the rest of us, and if the historian is right, perhaps you will learn something that will save the lives of the soldiers you have not yet thrown away. The Krellian envoy did not like that. I could see it in the way his jaw plates clicked, but he could not refuse the Speaker in front of the whole chamber, not without losing face, and so he gave a stiff nod and walked back to the center of the floor. He stood there with his arms crossed, glaring at the hollow display, waiting for his triumph to begin. I walked to my old seat in the back of the chamber and lowered myself into it slowly. My legs were still shaking, my hands were cold. I looked up at the hollow display and watched the little blue marker of Earth and the cluster of red marks that meant the Krellian fleet drifting through the dark on a course that could no longer be changed. I thought of the survey team's final note. I had read it 1,000 times in my long career. I had read it so many times that I knew every word by heart. The last line of that note had haunted me for 200 years, and now, sitting in that quiet chamber with the eyes of every species in the known galaxy fixed on the slow path of those red marks, I heard the line again in my mind. Do not isolate them. Isolation will only delay the moment when they reach us, and when they reach us, we will want to have been their friends. We had not listened. We had sealed them away anyway. We had told ourselves it was for their safety. We had told ourselves it was for ours. And now, on this quiet morning, after 2 centuries of careful silence, the silence was about to break. The Krellian envoy laughed again, soft and slow, sure of his victory. I closed all 4 of my eyes and prayed to the old gods of my people that I was wrong. I knew in the bottom of my heart that I was not. In 6 hours, we would all find out together. Every species in the chamber, every leader at the table, the whole watching galaxy, we would all find out together what the humans of Earth had been doing in their long, quiet centuries while we pretended they were not there. And the hollow display ticked down. 5 hours and 59 minutes. The waiting began. The chamber did not empty. That was the first sign that something had changed. In all my long years as keeper of records, I had watched ambassadors slip away from long sessions to eat, to rest, to send word back to their home worlds. The chamber was never full for more than an hour at a time, but on this morning, no one moved. The Vaughn ambassador sat in his tall seat with his silver fur smoothed flat against his shoulders, his eyes fixed on the hollow display. The ethel speaker floated in place, his soft glow dimmed to a low pulse. The reptile envoys from the southern arm coiled their long necks together and whispered in their slow hissing tongue. The water beings of the Trail Sea filled the glass tank that served as their seat and pressed their wide soft faces against the front of it, watching the slow red marks of the Krellian fleet move across the map. No one wanted to be the one who missed it. I watched them all from my old quiet seat in the back, and I felt something strange begin to grow in my chest. It was not pride, it was something colder. It was the feeling of being right about a thing you very much wanted to be wrong about. A young aide from the kitchens entered the chamber. With a tray of warm cups, he moved slowly between the seats and offered drinks to anyone who wanted them. Most of the ambassadors did not even notice him. The Krellian envoy waved him away without looking. When the aide reached me, I took a cup with one of my middle hands and held it between my palms. Warmth helped a little, not much, but a little. Honored historian, the aide said in a quiet voice, is it true what they are saying in the halls, that the small blue world will fall before the sun sets? I looked up at him. He was young. His face was open and curious in the way the faces of the young always are. He did not know yet that the universe was old and strange, and that small worlds sometimes hide the largest secrets. Wait and watch with the rest of us, I said, and remember what you see today. You will tell this story for the rest of your life. He bowed his head and moved on with his tray. I sipped the warm drink. My hands were still cold. At the front of the chamber, the speaker turned to one of his junior aides and gave a soft instruction. The aide nodded and tapped at a small panel. The hollowed display shifted. The map of the stars zoomed in. The slow drifting view of the deep dark was replaced by something closer, something more detailed, a picture of the small blue world itself. Earth as seen from the deep eye of one of our long-range watchers. I leaned forward in my seat. The image was beautiful in a way that took me by surprise. The world was wrapped in white swirls of cloud. The seas were a soft, deep blue. The lands were brown and green and gold. I had read the survey reports many times, but I had never let myself look at the planet for very long. It had felt wrong to look. It had felt like staring at a sleeping creature you had been told not to wake, but now the creature was about to wake on its own, and the whole chamber was watching the slow sweep of clouds across its face. It is so small, whispered the Vorn ambassador. They are all small, said the Ethel speaker softly, until they are not. The Krellian envoy gave a sharp click of his jaw plates. Sentiment, he said, sentiment over a target world. This is what the conquered has become. Soft speakers and old historians and creatures who cry over rocks. The speaker did not turn his head. He simply said in a calm voice that carried across the chamber, watch the screen, envoy, watch and learn. Krellian fell silent. He did not like being spoken to that way, but he watched. Hours passed. The red marks on the side of the display continued their slow march. I do not remember much of what was said in those hours. The ambassadors traded quiet words. Reports came and went. A messenger arrived from the eastern arm with news that did not matter. A trade dispute was raised and quickly set aside. The whole chamber was waiting for the same moment, and no one wanted to admit it. Finally, when the count showed only 30 minutes remaining, the speaker raised his hand again. Open all channels, he said. The aides moved quickly. The hollow display split into many small windows. One showed the Krellian fleet, one showed Earth, one showed the wide, deep gap of space between them. One showed a soft feed from the Krellian command ship, where the fleet master sat in his high chair and gave orders to his captains. Another showed a quiet feed from one of our deep watchers, a tiny machine we had placed in the Sol system many decades ago, hidden behind a moon set to record everything that happened in that part of the dark. I had not known that Watcher was still active. I made a soft sound of surprise. The speaker turned to me. You did not know, historian? No, I said. It was a quiet order, he said, made long before my time, made just after the seal was placed. The conquered wished to know if the small blue world ever began to wake. We placed the Watcher there, and we never turned it off. And what has it seen? I asked. The speaker gave me a long, calm look. With his 3 calm eyes, many things. He said, many things that I would now like the whole chamber to see. He gave another soft instruction to his aides. The Watcher's old archive began to play. The chamber watched together as the small blue world spun on the screen, year after year, decade after decade, all the way back to the time of the survey. We saw lights grow in the dark sides of the continents. We saw bright moving shapes climb into the high air. We saw small silver things lift off from the ground and reach toward the moon. We saw shining metal arms unfold in low orbit. We saw bright lines of light cross the night side of the planet in patterns that looked from far away like the patterns of a great web. I leaned closer. The web was familiar. I had seen something like it before. Speaker, I whispered. Speaker, what are those lines? The speaker did not answer at once. He let the Watcher's old archive run. The picture sped forward. The web grew thicker. The lights on the dark side of the planet grew brighter. Small, bright marks began to appear in the high orbit, more and more of them year by year, until the space above the small blue world was thick with quiet shining things that the Watcher could not name. They have been building, the speaker said quietly. For how long? Asked the Vaughn ambassador. For as long as the Watcher has been recording, said the speaker. 200 years they have been quietly building in the dark above their own home. They never told us. They never reached out. They simply built as if they were preparing, as if they were waiting. The Krellian envoy gave a loud bark of laughter, but it was thinner now. It did not fill the chamber the way his laughter had before. Preparing for what? He scoffed. Pretty lights in the sky, toys in orbit, children's playthings. My fleet master will scrape them all off the face of that little world in the first hour. You will see. The speaker turned to him very slowly. Yes, he said, we will see. The display ticked down. 10 minutes, 5 minutes. The whole chamber leaned forward. I do not think any of us were breathing. The little red marks of the Krellian fleet were now so close to the little blue marker of Earth that they almost touched. The fleet master on the command feed gave a sharp order. His captains answered. The first wave of ships began to slow and turn and form into the wide arrow shape the Krellians always used when they entered a new sky. And then the small blue world did something none of us expected. It spoke. Every channel on the hollow display lit up with the same signal at the same moment. Every frequency, every wavelength, every band of sound and light and quiet wave that the conquered had ever measured. The signal poured into the chamber from every direction. The aide scrambled to turn the volume down before it broke the listening crystals. The signal was a voice, or rather many voices, many voices speaking in many tongues, all saying the same single word over and over. Calm and clear. Insert. No, the Krellian fleet master heard it. His face on the command feed turned a deep dark color. He gave a sharp order to his Communications officer, the officer, reported that the signal was being broadcast from every part of the small blue world, from every continent, from every great city, from every quiet village and lonely island, from the high orbit too, from the dark side of the moon, from places the Krellians did not have on their maps and had not even thought to scan. No, the fleet master grew angry. He ordered the standard speech to begin, the speech that had broken 100 worlds before this one, the speech that promised mercy for those who knelt and pain for those who did not. The speech began to play on every Krellian channel. It blared into the dark above the small blue world in the rough, harsh tongue of the hegemony. The small blue world answered with the same single word, no, and then while we all watched from the safe quiet of our chamber, the lights of Earth began to wake. I will not forget what I saw next. For as long as I am alive, the watchers, I caught it all and threw it onto the big, bright display in front of us. Web of lines on the night side of the planet, the lines we had not understood, began to glow, not soft and pretty, not gentle. They glowed the deep, bright color of a forge that had been kept burning for 200 quiet years, the shining things in high orbit, the small marks the watcher had counted year by year, began to move. They turned, they opened, they unfolded long, thin arms and wide curved plates and shapes that I, the keeper of records for the Galactic, conquered. Had no name for the dark side of the moon, the side the Krellians had not scanned, lit up with the same deep glow. Doors that had been hidden in the gray dust slid open. Bright things rose out of them and took position in the high, quiet space above the small blue world. The chamber gasped as one. The Krellian envoy stepped back from the hollow display. The plates of his jaw clicked together very fast. What, he whispered, what is all that? I rose from my seat. I walked slowly to the center of the floor. My legs were not shaking anymore. The cold weight in my chest had turned into something else, something heavy and sad and very calm. I stood beside the envoy and I looked up at the bright glowing shapes that had unfolded above Earth, and I gave him the only answer I could give. That, I said, is what people build when they spend 200 years waiting for someone to come for their home. The fleet master on the command feed shouted an order. His ships began to break formation. He had seen the lights too. He had seen the shapes. He could not name them either, but a fleet master does not need to name a thing to know it is a threat. He ordered the first wave to attack. He ordered the second wave to flank. He ordered the third wave to hold the rear and protect the command ship. His captains answered with the sharp clicks of the Krellian battle tongue. The first wave began to move. The small blue world watched them come, and the small blue world did not flinch. The bright shapes in orbit began to turn together like a great quiet flower, opening its many soft petals to the sun. They did not fire, not yet. They simply turned, and the watcher caught the movement, and the chamber stared at the screen, and the Krellian envoy made a sound in the back of his throat that I had never heard a Krellian make before. It was the sound of fear. The first wave of his fleet crossed the line. The bright shapes finished turning. The web on the night side of the planet glowed brighter and brighter and brighter still, until the whole dark side of Earth looked like a single great forge ready to pour. And then the small blue world began to answer, not with a word this time, with everything else it had. The First wave of Krellian ships never reached the high air of Earth. We watched it on the wide, bright screen of the chamber, and I do not think any of us could quite believe what our eyes were showing us, the bright shapes in orbit, the things that had unfolded out of the long, quiet dark did not fire the way conquered ships fire. They did not throw plasma, they did not throw beams, they did something else. Something the watcher could not name. Something the recording crystals struggled to hold. A soft, thin line of light reached out from one of the shapes, and where it touched the lead Krellian dreadnought, the dreadnought simply was no longer there. No flash, no spread of fire, no slow drift of pieces. The ship had been there, and then the ship had not been there, and the soft, thin line of light moved on, very calm, very slow, and where it touched the next ship was also no longer there. The Krellian envoy made a small sound. He put one of his clawed hands against his own chest, as if he had been struck. What he said, what he could not finish the sentence. None of us could finish a sentence in that moment. The speaker leaned forward, in his soft, folded skin and his three calm eyes were very wide. The Vorn ambassador had gone still as stone. The ethel speaker's soft glow had brightened to a sharp, white pulse of alarm. The water beings of the trail sea were pressing themselves so hard against the front of their tank that the glass was beginning to bend. The thin line of light kept moving. The first wave of the Krellian fleet kept disappearing one by one. Quiet, calm, no noise, no fire, just the soft sweep of the line, and then empty space where ships had been. The fleet master on the command feed was shouting. He was shouting in the rough, harsh tongue of the hegemony, and his voice cracked at the edges of every word. He ordered the second wave to flank. He ordered the third wave to hold. He ordered the screens to be raised, the shields to be put to full, the gun crews to fire at will into the bright shapes. In orbit, the second wave broke formation and tried to swing wide around the planet to come at the bright shapes. From the side, the watcher caught this. Too, the watcher caught everything the small blue world had been waiting for. The flanking move, the bright shapes in orbit turned together like the petals of the great quiet flower I had seen before, and they faced the second wave as if they had known it was coming. Because they had known, because of course they had known. The humans of Earth had spent 200 years thinking about this morning. They had spent 200 years thinking about every single move a hostile fleet might make above their home. They had built their bright shapes and their hidden moon doors and their glowing forge web with every one of those moves in mind. The second wave broke against the bright shapes the way a slow wave breaks against a stone. Sure, it did not even slow them down. It did not even seem to interest them. The fleet master on the command feed had stopped shouting. He was staring at his own screens with the kind of look I had only seen once before in my long career, on the face of a young captain who had been told that his entire home world had been swallowed by a stellar event in the night. The look of a being who has just learned that the floor of his life is not where he thought it was. The Krellian envoy in our chamber turned to the speaker. His armor plates were trembling. His voice was thin. Stop them, he said. The speaker looked at him slowly. Stop who? Envo, the humans. Stop the humans. Tell them to stop. Tell them this was a mistake. Tell them we did not know. Tell them my people did not know. Tell them I cannot tell them anything. The speaker said calmly, we do not speak to them. We have not spoken to them in 200 years. That was the choice of the conquered, that was the seal we placed. We do not have a channel to them, envoy. We have never had one. Your fleet master is the first being from outside their world to speak to them in 20 decades. And he chose on behalf of you to speak. The speech of the hegemony, the Krellian. Envoy stared at him, then open one now. He whispered, there is no time, said the speaker, and there is no need. Watch the screen. The third wave of the Krellian fleet was now in motion. The fleet master had given his last desperate order. He had ordered the third wave to fall back to protect the command ship, to retreat into the deep dark and run for home. He was not going to fight, he was going to run. We could see it on the command feed. We could see the third wave begin to turn. Slowly, the way large ships turn, swinging their great heavy hulls around to face the way they had come. The small blue world did not let them. The Watcher caught it again. A second set of bright shapes rose from the backside of the planet, shapes that had been hidden behind the curve of Earth, waiting in the quiet, holding their position, bidding their time. They came up over the edge of the world the way a sunrise comes up over a mountain, slow, bright, certain. The third wave of the Krellian fleet found them in its path. The third wave tried to turn again, to turn the other way, to find any path that did not have a bright shape in it. The small blue world did not let them do that either. More shapes rose from every side, from above, from below, from behind. They surrounded the Krellian fleet the way a careful net surrounds a school of fish, and they did not close in fast. They did not need to. They simply held their wide, soft pattern. The dark and the fleet master and his captains watched their paths close one by one, and they understood in those long, slow moments that the path home was no longer there. The fleet master sat down in his high chair. I had never seen a Krellian commander sit down on a feed before. It is not something they do. They stand on the bridge. They stand for the whole battle. Standing is a mark of strength among their people. To sit in the middle of a fight is to admit that the fight is over. The fleet master sat down. He sat down and he put one of his clawed hands over his face. The communications officer beside him looked at him with wide, stunned eyes and waited for an order. The order did not come. A soft new signal began to play on every channel. It was a single voice this time, a human voice, a woman's voice, calm and clear and kind in a way that somehow made my back plates crawl. Because kindness is a very strange thing to hear from someone who has just shown you what she can do. This is Earth, she said. We see your command ship. We see your remaining vessels. We see your fleet master. We have been listening to your orders since you entered our system, and we understand the language of the hegemony very well. We have been listening to the hegemony for a long time. The chamber held its breath. You may stand down, she said, or you may continue. We will not ask twice. Fleet master did not lift his hand from his face. The communications officer waited. The captains of the remaining ships waited. The Krellian envoy in our chamber was almost bent double now, his armored knees touching the floor of the chamber, his head down, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. The fleet master spoke without lifting his head. His voice was very small. Stand down, he said. All ships stand down. Weapons cold, engines low. Stand down. Order went out. The remaining Krellian ships in the wide, quiet net of bright Shapes began to slow, their gun ports closed, their engines dimmed, their shields powered down, they drifted. They became, in the space of a single breath, a fleet of cold, quiet boxes hanging in the dark above a small blue world. Krellian envoy in our chamber made a sound that was not quite a word. The speaker turned to him very calmly. Envoy, he said, I believe your invasion is over. The envoy did not answer. The soft new voice on the channel continued. Fleet Master, you and your crews will be received with care, your ships will be examined and held, your soldiers will be given food and water and a safe place to rest. No one will be harmed. We do not act the way you act. We do not break our prisoners. We do not sell them. We simply hold them, and we will return them to your people when we and your people have spoken about what happens next. The Vorn ambassador made a small sound of surprise. She speaks of mercy, he whispered. She speaks of mercy with a fleet at her back, said the Ethel speaker softly, which is, I think, the only kind of mercy that travels across the dark. I sat back in my seat. My middle hands were trembling. My mind was racing. I had spent my whole long life writing the history of the known galaxy, and I knew with the cold, certain weight of a historian who has just watched a new chapter begin, that everything we thought we knew about the small blue world was wrong, not a little wrong from the first page. We had thought they were waiting because they were weak. They had been waiting because they were not yet ready. We had thought their silence meant they did not know about us. Their silence had meant they knew about us very well, and they had chosen with the slow patience of a people who had decided long ago that the universe was a dangerous place, to say nothing while they built. They had built for 200 years. They had built in the long quiet. They had built in the dark side of their moon and the deep cold of their oceans and the high silent orbit above their own clouds. They had built because they had looked up at the stars, and they had decided with the strain certainty their species seemed to be born with, that someone one day would come for their home, and someone had come, and the someone who had come had not done well. The soft, kind voice on the channel was still speaking. She was speaking to the conquered now. She was speaking to every species that had a seat in our chamber. She was speaking to the speaker himself by name, and she was speaking to the Vaughn ambassador and the Ethel speaker and the reptile envoys and the water beings, and to me by name. By every name she knew us all, honored speakers of the Galactic conquered. She said, we have heard your meetings, we have heard your reports, we have read your seal, we have known about you for a very long time. We did not reach out because we understood that you did not wish to be reached. We respected your choice. We hope that you can now respect ours. Earth wishes to speak. The speaker rose slowly from his seat. The chamber held still. I rose too, without quite meaning to. My old legs did not shake. This time, I stood in the center of the floor beside the trembling Krellian envoy, and I looked up at the bright screen, and I thought in the quiet of my own mind about the survey team's final note, the note I had read 1,000 times, the note that had haunted me for 200 long years. Do not isolate them. Isolation will only delay the moment. When they reach us, and when they reach us, we will want to have been there. Friends, the speaker stepped to the center of the floor. He folded his soft hands together in the formal greeting of the conquered. He looked up at the screen with his 3 calm eyes, and he spoke in a voice that filled the whole bright chamber. Earth, he said, the Galactic Concord hears you speak. We are listening, and the small blue world, after 200 quiet centuries, finally answered. The woman on the screen was older than I had expected. Her hair was the soft color of fresh fallen snow on a high mountain. Her face had the kind of lines that come from a long life of thinking hard about hard things. She held a small white cup in one of her hands, and she lifted it once to her lips and took a slow, careful sip before she spoke. The whole chamber watched her sip the drink. The whole chamber watched the small white cup come down again and rest in her steady hand. The whole chamber waited. My name is Helen Bishop, she said. I am the speaker for the Council of Earth. I am the voice the people of my world have chosen to send to you this morning. I am not a leader. I do not rule. I speak for those who do. You may call me Helen if you wish, or you may call me Speaker, or you may call me by my full name. I will answer to any of them. The speaker of our Concord folded his soft hands tighter. Helen Bishop, he said, we hear you. I am the speaker of the Galactic Concord. You may call me Speaker, or you may call me Orin, which is the short form of my name. I will answer to either. Orin said. The woman on the screen, she tested the name softly as if she were tasting it. Orin, a good short name, easy to say. Thank you. She set the small white cup down somewhere out of the picture. She folded her hands together in front of her, the way our own speaker had folded his hands. And the small thing was not lost on me. She had studied us. She had watched us. She had learned our small, careful courtesies. She was greeting our speaker in the way our speaker would have wanted to be greeted, and she was doing it on her first day, on her first call, on the very first words that had passed between Earth and the Concord in 200 long years. I made a small soft note in the corner of my mind. The humans of Earth pay attention. They pay close attention. They do not waste a chance to show that they have been listening. Helen Bishop said, our speaker, we have many questions. I'm sure you do, she said. May we ask them? You may. I will answer the ones I can. I may not answer all of them. There are things my council has asked me to hold back for now. I hope you will understand. We are new to this, so are you. I think we will both make small mistakes. I would rather make my small mistakes by saying too little than by saying too much. That is wise, said our speaker. It is cautious, she said, which is not always the same as wise, but it will do for today. A soft murmur ran through the chamber. The ethel speaker dimmed his glow in the way his people did when they were thinking hard. Vorn ambassador leaned forward in his tall seat. The water beings of the trail sea pressed against the front of their tank again, their wide soft faces calm and curious. Even the Krellian envoy had lifted his head a little. He was watching the woman on the screen with a look I could not quite read. He had stopped trembling. He was not standing again. He was kneeling still on the floor of the chamber with his armored hands folded on his lap, watching the human speaker with the careful blank face of a being who is trying very hard to learn the shape of the room he has just fallen into. Our speaker began with the question I had been hoping he would ask first. Helen Bishop, he said, how long have you known about us? The woman did not look away. We have known about you for 212 of our years. The first signal we caught was a short broadcast from a small Concord scout ship that passed close to our system without Slowing, we were not advanced enough. Then to understand what we had caught. We knew only that we had caught something. We saved it. We listened to it. We listened to it for many decades. We taught ourselves to break the sound of it into pieces and then to put those pieces back together. We taught ourselves the first words of your speech. That way, by listening for a long time, and after that said our speaker. After that we built better ears, we built bigger ears, we built so many ears we could no longer count them all. We pointed them at the stars and we listened. We caught more signals, many more from many different species, from your chambers, from your trade routes, from your border patrols, from your quiet meetings. We listened to it all. We did not understand all of it, of course. We did not have the keys, but we understood enough. We understood that there was a conquered. We understood that there was a hegemony. We understood that the conquered did not wish to speak with us. We understood why. You understood our seal. We understood that. We frightened your survey team, she said softly. We are sorry about that. We did not mean to. We were not trying to. Long quiet fell over the chamber. I felt the words sink into the soft folded skin of my own back plates. We were not trying to. The humans had not been trying to fright anyone. They had simply been being themselves, and being themselves had been enough. Our speaker bowed his head a little. Helen Bishop, he said, why did you not reach out to us? Once you had heard us, once you had understood our speech, why did you not call across the dark and ask to speak? She did not answer at once. She turned and looked at someone outside the picture, someone we could not see, and she gave a small soft nod, the kind of nod a leader gives when she has asked for permission to share a thing she might otherwise have kept. Then she turned back to the screen. Because we knew you had sealed us, she said. Because we knew that you had made the choice on purpose. Because we are a people who have learned the hard way that when someone has decided not to speak with you, the answer is not to shout louder. The answer is to wait and to grow and to make yourself into the kind of neighbor they might one day wish to know. We did not want to be the loud cousin who pounds on the door of the quiet house. We wanted to be the patient one who tends his own garden until the day the quiet house comes out on its own. We waited, we tended, we grew, and we built because we had read enough of your reports to know that not everyone in the wide dark would honor your seal forever. We knew in our slow, careful way that one day someone like the hegemony would come knocking, and we wanted very much to be ready when they did. The Krellian envoy made a soft sound on the floor of the chamber. I could not tell if it was a sound of shame or a sound of fear. It did not matter. The woman on the screen did not look at him. She did not need to. You were ready, said our speaker. We were ready, she said. We were not happy to be ready. We did not wish to be ready. We would have been gladder, far glad to spend the last 200 years learning songs and your sciences and your stories, but the world we were born into is not the world we wished for. It is the world we have, and so we built and we waited and we hoped, and we are very glad that on the day someone came for our home was not undefended. And what now? Said our speaker softly. She picked up the small white cup again. She took another slow sip. She set it down. She folded her hands. Now, she said, Earth wishes to apply for membership in the Galactic. Conquered, the chamber erupted. I had never heard the chamber make a sound like the one it made then. It was not a Shout, it was not a cheer, it was not a wail, it was something in between all three of them. A great rolling wave of soft cries and sharp clicks and low hums and quick whispers, a wave that broke against the high walls of the chamber and rolled back across the floor and broke again. The Vorn ambassador stood up out of his tall seat. The ethel speaker pulsed bright and dim and bright. Again, the reptile envoys hissed all at once in their slow rolling tongue. The water beings of the Trail Sea swirled inside their tank. The aides of the back of the chamber dropped their trays. The kitchen worker who had brought me my warm cup of drink stared up at the screen with his mouth wide open. The Krellian envoy bowed his head and said nothing. Our speaker raised one soft hand. The chamber slowly quieted. Helen Bishop, he said, membership in the Concord is not a small thing. There are many steps, many tests, many slow, careful checks of records and intentions and ways. We do not take new members lightly. We have not taken a new member in over 300 of your years. I know, she said. We have read about your tests. We have read about your checks. We are willing to take them. We will not rush you. We will not press you. We have been patient for 2 centuries. We can be patient for a little while longer. Take your tests, make your checks. We will answer. We will help. We will be open with you within the small things. My counsel has asked me to hold back for today. We will be very open. And in the meantime, said our speaker, in the meantime, she said, we will be a quiet, good neighbor. We will not push outward. We will not press into the systems near us. We will not claim worlds. We will not take ships. We will hold the captured Krellian fleet in the way I told the fleet master with care, and we will return the soldiers when the hegemony comes to the table to speak. We will help any traveler who passes through our part of the dark. We will offer water. We will offer rest. We will offer kindness. We do not wish to be the loud cousin. We never did. We wish very much to be the quiet one who tends his garden, and now and again when a friend goes by, offers a cup of something warm. At the door, she lifted the small white cup again and showed it to the screen. This is what we drink when we have hard mornings, she said. We have been drinking a lot of it today. You are welcome to a cup of it, or in any time you like, you and yours. We would be glad. Our speaker, the calm, wise leader of the Galactic, conquered the being who had ruled the long sessions of our chamber for 40 of our years, who had never, in all the time I had known him, shown a flicker of strong feeling in front of the wide, watching faces of his peers. Smiled. It was a small smile, a careful one, but it was real. Thank you, Helen Bishop, he said. We will be glad of the cup. She smiled back. Then we will speak again, she said, soon when you are ready. Take your time. We are not going anywhere. We will be here, tending our garden, waiting for the knock at the door. The picture faded. The chamber sat in silence. The Krellian envoy bowed his head lower and lower until his armored brow touched the smooth floor. He did not speak. He did not need to. The speaker turned to him slowly. Envoy, he said, stand up. Return to your home. Tell your hegemony what you saw today. Tell them with care. Tell them with truth. Tell them that the conquered has watched the small blue world for 200 years, and on this morning the small blue world stepped out of its long quiet and into the wide, bright life of the galaxy. Tell them that the conquered will be considering Earth's request for membership. Tell them that any further Move by the hegemony against Earth will be treated as a move against the conquered itself. Tell them finally that the soldiers of the captured fleet are in the hands of a people whose kindness is not weakness. Tell them this very clearly so that no one of your people is ever again confused. The envoy raised his head. He nodded. Once, he stood slowly on shaking armored legs, and he turned and walked out of the chamber without another word. The doors closed behind him. The speaker turned to me. Villari, he said. I rose. Speaker, open the file. The file, I said. The new file, he said gently. For Earth, the one you have been wanting to write for 200 years. I bowed my head. I felt a small, hot sting at the corners of my 4 eyes. I had been the junior worker who had stamped the seal. I had been the keeper of the silence. I had been the historian who had spent 2 centuries quietly hopping. He was wrong about the small blue world. I had been wrong in some ways and right in others, and the part of me that was right was the part that had always wanted in some quiet corner of my old heart to one day write a new page. I went to my seat. I opened a fresh, clean scroll. I took up my old, worn pen. I wrote the first line of the new file in slow, careful letters. Earth. Class 1, founding member of the next age. Handle with respect. I paused. I added one more line in the soft, small letters of the deep footnotes where only historians ever read. We were always the small ones. We just did not know it. Until now, the next year and a half changed every part of the long, quiet life I had known. I had spent 2 centuries in the calm back rows of the conquered chamber, watching the slow, careful turn of council business, writing my long, careful reports, going home each evening to my small, quiet rooms and my small, quiet meals and my small, quiet life. I had thought in the soft old way of historians that my time of great events was behind me. I had thought the only great event of my career had been the day I stamped the seal on the small blue world. I had been wrong. The great event of my career was the day the seal was broken, and the and a half that came after Earth's application for membership in the Galactic conquered was the slowest and fastest piece of work I had ever helped to write. Slow because there were so many forms to fill, so many tests to set up, so many old quiet rules that no one had used in 300 years, and that had to be dusted off and read again before anyone knew quite what they meant. Fast, because the humans on their side answered every question we asked with care and speed. They never made us wait. They never let a request sit. They sent us their histories and their sciences and their books and their songs, more material in the first 3 months than the conquered archives had received from any new member in our long history, all of it neatly translated into 7 of our most common tongues, all of it open, all of it honest, all of it almost too much for our worn old reading rooms to hold. I read a great deal of it myself. It was, after all, my work. I read their long, careful records of their own past. I read the names of their old leaders and the dates of their old struggles and the slow climbing path of their old sciences. I read their stories. I read their songs. I read the books their children read at school. I read the books their elders read at night when the world had gone quiet around them. I read the small, careful poems they wrote for the people they loved when those people went away and did not come back. I read all of it late into the long nights in my small, quiet rooms by the soft, warm light of my old reading lamp. And I came to understand the small blue world in a way I had never understood any world before. I will tell you what I learned. I will tell you the one thing I learned that surprised me the most. The humans were not in the end a hard people I had thought they would be. I had thought from the survey reports and the quiet records in the long shape of their past that I would find a people made of stone and iron and old burned things, a people who had spent so many long centuries climbing through hardship that they had forgotten how to be soft. I was wrong in the deepest and most surprising way. The humans were not made of stone, the humans were made of kindness, a strange, careful kindness, a kindness that had been forged in the long fires of their past, a kindness that had learned by being broken many times exactly how much it was worth. They were kind to each other, they were kind to small animals, they were kind to old people, they were kind to children who were not even their own. They wrote whole books about being kind, they built whole houses for the sole purpose of caring for people who had no one else to care for them. They had whole groups of grown ones whose entire daily work was to make sure other grown ones had food and rest and a soft bed at the end of the day. I had not expected this. I had expected an iron people. I had found a soft people who had built iron only because the world had asked them to. The iron, I came to understand, was not who they were. The iron was what they wore. When the world came knocking, underneath the iron, when no one was knocking, when the door of the small house was quiet, they were soft, they were warm, they liked to sit together in the evenings and tell each other stories and laugh and eat slow, careful meals and watch the sun go down. They liked very much to be left alone to tend their gardens. They liked even more to be the kind of neighbor a passing friend would stop to share a cup of warm drink with at the door. I wrote this in my new file. I wrote it in the deep footnotes where only historians read. I wrote it carefully because I knew that the future readers of this file, the long line of young keepers who would come after me, would need to understand this one thing. If they were to understand anything at all about the small blue world, the iron was not who they were. The iron was what the world had made them carry. Underneath the iron, they were the softest people in the wide, bright galaxy. Helen Bishop came to the conquered chamber for the first time in person 2 months after the call. She brought with her a small, careful team of human speakers and human teachers and human writers, 6 of them in all, and one quiet old human soldier who never said much but who stood at the back of every room with the calm, settled look of a being who had seen many hard mornings and was very glad that this morning was not one of them. The soldier's name was Walter Gray. He was, Helen told us softly over a cup of warm drink on her second evening with us, the oldest member of her council. He had spent his long life in the slow, careful work of keeping his people safe. He had agreed to come with her to the conquered chamber not because he wished to speak, but because he wished with his own old eyes to see the wide, bright galaxy his people had been listening to for so many quiet decades. He sat at the back of every meeting and he watched and he listened and he said almost nothing, and when he did speak, the whole room grew quiet because his small, careful words were the kind of words that carried the weight of a long, thinking life behind them. I came to like Walter Gray very much. We did not speak often, we did not need to. We were both old beings in a room full of younger ones, and we had both spent our lives in the quiet work behind the loud work, and there is a kind of understanding that grows between two such beings without the need for very many words. I would bring him cups of warm drink at the back of the chamber during the long sessions, and he would nod to me, and he would sip slowly, and he would say, "Thank you, Valari," in his low, quiet voice, and that would be enough for both of us. Helen Bishop spoke at the front. She spoke well. She answered every question the Concord put to her. She answered some questions even before they were asked. She brought maps and charts and records in small, bright cubes of human song. She brought small, careful samples of human food, which the kitchens of the chamber were very interested in, and which a few of the braver ambassadors agreed to taste. She brought on her third day a small leather book of human poems for our speaker, hand-picked by her council, bound by a small, careful maker in a small, careful town on the warm green side of her world. Our speaker took the book in his soft, folded hands and looked down at it for a long, quiet moment, and I, who had known him for 40 of his years, saw a small, bright something in the corner of his 3 calm eyes that I had never seen there before. "Thank you, Helen Bishop," he said softly. "I will read this carefully. I will read it with care. I would like that," she said. "If you have questions about any of the poems, you may ask me. Some of them are very old, some of them are new. They are all, I think, the best of what my people have made out of the soft, warm parts of our long climb." He read the book. He read it slowly over many evenings. He came into the chamber some mornings with a small, fresh quote from one of the poems on his soft, folded tongue, and he would share the quote with us gently before the work of the day began. The chamber slowly came to know the soft, warm side of the small blue world. The chamber slowly came to want to know more. The tests of membership took a year. They were old, long tests made of many small, careful steps, and Earth passed every one of them with the calm, slow patience of a people who had been waiting for 2 centuries to be asked. There were a few small bumps, of course there were. The humans did some things in ways that surprised us. The humans did not do some things at all. The humans had small, strong feelings about some matters that other species did not feel strongly about. The humans were quiet about some matters that other species were loud about. There were misunderstandings. There were soft, careful talks. There were apologies on both sides. There were patient, long evenings where Helen Bishop sat across from the speaker over small cups of warm drink, and the two of them slowly worked out the small, careful shapes of the things they did not yet understand about each other. I sat in on many of those evenings. I was, after all, the keeper of records. It was my work to write what was said. I wrote it all. I wrote the small, careful jokes Helen sometimes made when the talks grew too heavy. I wrote the small, careful sayings our speaker brought out when the talks needed a soft turn. I wrote the slow, careful way they came, evening by evening, to know each other, not as the speaker of a planet and the speaker of a Concord, but as Helen and Orrin, two thinking old beings sharing warm drinks at a small, quiet table. I wrote the night Walter Gray very quietly asked our speaker if he might one day be allowed to walk in the wide, bright halls of the Concord Library. Our speaker looked at him for a long moment with his 3 calm eyes, and then he said very softly that Walter Gray was welcome in the library any time he wished for as long as he wished, and that I, Velari, the keeper of records, would be very glad to walk with him through any of the long, quiet rows of scrolls he might care to see. Walter Gray nodded and sipped his warm drink, and said, "Thank you, Oren, thank you." Velari and I, sitting quietly at my small, careful desk in the corner, felt a soft, warm thing rise in the middle of my chest, and I did not write that part down because some things are not for the long files. The Krellian hegemony came to the table 4 months after the great morning. They came slowly. They came with their heads down. They came with their best speakers, not the smug envoy who had stood in our chamber that morning, but a softer, older Krellian named Vas Rendon, a careful being who had spent his whole long life in the slow trade rooms of the southern arm, and who knew how to bow without making a show of it. He bowed to our speaker, he bowed to Helen Bishop, he bowed to the captured fleet master who had been brought from Earth for the talks in a small, careful ship with soft seats and warm drinks and a single quiet human escort. The captured fleet master was thinner than he had been on the morning of the attack. He was also calmer. He had spent 4 months in the care of the small blue world, and the small blue world, true to Helen's word, had not been hard on him. The fleet master told Vas Rendon in the soft, careful tongue of the hegemony that he had been treated with more kindness in 4 months on Earth than he had received in his whole long career in the fleet of his own home. Vas Rendon bowed lower at that. He bowed for a long time. He did not raise his head until our speaker very gently told him that the bow was deep enough that the conquered had heard that the hegemony's apology was accepted on the careful, slow terms that had been written out in the talks. The terms were simple. The hegemony would never again move against Earth. The hegemony would pay a long, careful set of small payments to the small blue world over the next 20 of their years in food and water and ships and goods in honor of the trouble they had caused. The hegemony would finally allow small, quiet team of conquered watchers to sit in the back of their own chambers. From now on, the way I had sat in the back of ours, to write the long, careful records of their meetings and to make sure that the careful, slow shapes of the new agreement were kept. The hegemony agreed. They had no choice. They had seen the bright shapes in the sky above Earth. They knew what the small blue world could do. They did not wish to find out what it might be able to do in 20 more years. Helen Bishop, at the end of the talks in the small, careful quiet of the chamber, with the soft, warm light of the evening falling through the high windows, rose from her seat and walked to the captured fleet master and held out one of her hands. The fleet master stared at her hand for a long moment, then he reached out slowly with one of his armored hands, and he took her hand in his, and the two of them stood there together for a long, careful moment in the soft, warm light. And Helen Bishop said in the rough, harsh tongue of the hegemony 3 small, careful words: "We forgive you." The fleet master made a small, soft sound in the back of his throat. It was, I think, the sound a Krellian makes when he weeps, though I had never heard one weep before. He did not let go of her hand. For a long time, Earth was admitted to the Galactic, conquered on a soft, warm evening in the early spring of the 2nd year. The ceremony was small. The humans had asked for a small ceremony. Helen Bishop stood at the front of the chamber with our speaker beside her, and she spoke a few soft, careful words, and Our speaker spoke a few soft, careful words back, and the seal on the small blue world was lifted gently for the last time, and a new seal was placed in. Instead, the new seal said, Class 1, founding member of the next age. Handle with respect. I had written those words in my new file on the morning of the great morning. I had not known then that they would become the words of the official seal. Our speaker had read them in the deep footnotes of my file, in the soft small letters where only historians read, and he had liked them. He had liked them very much. He had asked me quietly on a soft, warm evening, over a cup of warm human drink, if he might use my words. I had said yes. I had said yes with a small bright something in the corner of my 4 eyes that I had not felt in many long years. The seal was placed on a small, careful stone in the wide, bright hall of the Concord. The hall was full. Every ambassador, every speaker, every aide, every kitchen worker, every young historian. Walter Gray stood at the back, where he always stood with his soft, quiet smile and his old steady eyes. Helen Bishop stood at the front with her white hair and her small white cup, and she lifted the cup once to the long, bright hall, and she said in a clear, strong voice that carried to every corner of the room, Thank you, friends. Thank you. We are very glad to be here. The hall lifted its many voices and answered her in 7 of our most common tongues all at once, all together. Great rolling soft cheer that filled the high walls and rolled back across the floor and rolled forward again, and I, sitting at my old quiet desk at the side of the room, with my old worn pen in my middle hand and my new fresh scroll open in front of me, wrote the last line of the long file of the first year. Earth has joined the Galactic Concord. The long quiet is over. The next age has begun. I paused. I thought of the serve team's note. I thought of the small, careful kindness of the humans. I thought of Walter Gay's soft, quiet smile and Helen Bishop's small white cup, and the slow, careful way our speaker had smiled just a little the first time he held the leather book of human poems in his soft folded hands. I added one more line in the deep footnotes where only historians read. We were afraid of them once. We will never be afraid of them again. They are the kind of friends we did not know we were waiting for. May the long quiet never come back. May the warm drink at the door always be offered. May the small blue world and the wide bright galaxy walk forward now, together, hand in armored hand, into the long bright morning of the next age. I set down my pen. I closed the file. I looked up across the wide bright hall at the warm soft faces of every species in the known galaxy, gathered together for the first time in 300 years to welcome a new friend into the long, careful work of the Concord. I saw Helen Bishop smile. I saw our speaker smile. I saw Walter Gray nod his slow, quiet nod at the back of the room. I saw the young aide from the kitchens, the one who had brought me my warm cup of drink on the morning of the great morning, standing wittied at the side of the hall with a tray of small bright cups in his careful young hands. I caught his eye. He came over. He offered me a cup. I took it, honored historian, he said softly, will you tell me the story one day, the whole story of how it all began? I smiled. I lifted my cup to him. I just did, young one, I said. I just did, and I sipped the warm drink, slow and careful, in the soft, warm light of the evening, in the wide, bright hall of the Concord, on the first day of the long, bright morning of the next age. And I thought with a Soft, warm something rising in the middle of my old chest that I was, after all my long, quiet years, very glad to have been the one who wrote it. Down the end.